Hello, everyone. Welcome to the final discussion for the Thousandfold Thought. This would also be the last discussion for the Prince of Nothing trilogy, which we have been reading approximately 100 pages every week. Thank if you've been watching, listening to these episodes with us, and reading along or commenting. Thank you so much. We really appreciate all the support. We will be continuing on to read the second apocalypse, starting. We'll take a week break and then we'll start the week after that. We'll read the first four chapters of The Judging Eye the next time we meet. With me, of course, we have the wonderful people we always get to discuss this with to finish the series off. Steve, would you like to start us off with introductions?
Sure. Steve, it's my second time reading the series, and you can find me on phtune.com, and I'm happy to be here.
Dan?
Nice. I'm Dan. I've read this book before, and really interested to know what you guys thought about the whole trilogy now that you've read it.
I'm Carl, first time reader, and I can say that I very much enjoyed the ending of this book, even if I am. I feel teased by some of the things. It definitely was. A lot was closed off, but there were a lot of questions raised as well that I did not necessarily expect.
Hi, my name is Mike. I'm a first-time reader of the series and member of Page Chewing, and I was pumping my fist when Carl said he felt teased because I felt the same way. Although I'm very happy that I read the series. It's one of the best I've read so far.
Oh,
Very nice. Do you want to start us off, Mike, then telling us what you liked the most about it?
Just these last 100 pages or so, right? So where to start? I guess I was, one of the things that really surprised me, let me just say, and I don't know how I feel about it, was there was kind of almost a bait and switch where I thought Confus was going to have a big hurrah. I think we were building up to him potentially, coming in, swooping in, and then my understanding, although maybe I'm curious to hear what others thought, is that Saban kind of pulled one over on him, and so I didn't expect that at all. So that was really striking. I mean, I picked that because that was maybe one of the less obvious things. Obviously, it was really great to see Moengus, but I did find some of those sections to bring up more questions. There's a few big reveals, of course, of Methanet. I would love maybe to hear from somebody else on that because I know there was a lot. Maybe Varsha, I'd love to hear what you thought. I won't go into it too much. I really loved, in some ways, I love the very last few pages of, without, maybe how Akamian reacted, although I was expecting something a little differently from him. So I could go on and on, but those are just a couple initial thoughts. Maybe I will, before I hand it over to somebody else, I'll just say, I did find myself not as interested in a few sections, and I feel like maybe it seemed like the ending was a little rushed in some places. So wherever they're talking about the battle scenes, I was a little less connected in that, and I think that is probably secondary to the story. However, I hear other people talking about how they love the battle scenes. So, but for me, I was not as interested in that. But yeah, I'd love to hear what others think.
I agree with everything you were saying there, Mike. I think the story for us first-time readers, the triumvirate, if you will, has definitely been that the battle scenes have been kind of hit or miss, and that there's just a lot. they're written a very particular style, and I respect what he's going for, but it's just so hard for me to follow and to feel emotionally invested, particularly when it's focusing on kind of the big picture or all the different like factions that get introduced specifically in that battle.
Yeah.
And we could be talking about any one of the battles, right? Is where he's constantly throwing in new factions and new ethnicities and tribes and different things at you within individual battles, and that remains true and is maybe more true than it's ever been in the big final battle. I mean, what I think it did well is it definitely gave me a sense of the chaos and the scale of the final battle. I really got that, but I was way more checked into it whenever we were seeing things from like Proyas's perspective, Confis's perspective, any of the characters that we actually like felt attached to, particularly just because again, it's just hard to keep track of everything when we're like constantly learning new proper nouns. And I, it's something that maybe it's better on a reread or on your like fourth reread, where you're like everything else is old hat, and so you're kind of picking up on like the real subtleties and maybe understand better how they all the different factions relate to each other. But it was a lot. I guess that the Saban thing also came as a surprise to me. I would be very curious to hear from the rereaders if that's like, that was not a rivalry that stood out to me, like that Confis and Saban. I wasn't necessarily expecting that to be. It definitely kind of felt like it came out of left field for me, but I'm also very open to the idea that I just missed things, and I didn't necessarily see those two characters' relationships develop. But for me, I was definitely like, I think I kind of, it was satisfying in that it was, satisfying to see Confis just like kind of have a wet fart of an ending. But, to have his own like troops kind of turn on him at the end, like that was interesting. But I just wasn't like, I guess Saban had to do something. I just wasn't necessarily like blown away by him being the one to kill Confis. It just wasn't, to me, the most dramatically satisfying. But other than that, I mean, I really loved how it all ended up. I have no idea what the hell's going on with Kelllhus now. We'd had like questions, but like the ending completely reframed my perspective of Kelllhus. Which I think is a good thing. I mean, it's frustrating for this trilogy because I didn't expect to be so confused by his story at the end there. Because that to me more than anything was the thing that felt like it just like raised way more, like all the stuff with the consult. I expected to not get like everything answered, and man, they're going to be mysterious. But Kellhus, I'd like thought, okay, like his story is like relatively straightforward. I thought, like we had to twist and turns, but then, and there were its mysteries and stuff, but it really like everything with Moengus at the end there, except actually what happened with Moengus himself as a person was just like shocking, and I did not know what to make of it. And that Kellhus' whole perspective on like the universe and on God or gods, and that we knew he was like hearing voices in terms of like, we knew he was speaking to the no God, but he thinks he's speaking to like God too, I guess. And I can't tell if he's mixing them up or what's happening there. I have way more questions than answers there, but I mean, I thought it was really intriguing, and it definitely had me turning pages really quickly. And I was very satisfied overall with, all the Moengus stuff, how Nair's story ended, Akamian and Esmenet, as tragic as it is. I thought, that was really great. I don't know that I necessarily needed them to have sex in the middle of the battle. That was a little like, I get it, like thematically kind of fits, but it like, that just felt a little out of place to me. Like generally I haven't actually been that bothered by the sexual content. Like, sometimes all the rape is a little much, but like, it usually makes sense to me why it's there. And like there, I was like, we have this great big final, this is the big battle of Shime, and they're deciding to like rip each other's clothes off. It just felt like a little, I don't know. That also felt a little weird to me, but I did like emotionally them having this like reunion, only for it to, of course, end tragically, because Esmenet is carrying Kellhus's child, and Kellhus is like all powerful. Anyway, those are my introductory thoughts.
Varsha?
Oh, cool. So I think Mike and Carl said more or less everything that I wanted to say. Battle scenes whooshed over my head. I tried to pay attention, but I couldn't do it. So in general, for me, action scenes are not a thing I like. I enjoy reading. I'm usually waiting for it to be over. And these one, like the others pointed out, were particularly in the category of I need to understand the information that I'm being given to be able to even follow it, which I don't necessarily want to in the first place. So, yeah, the battle scenes whooshed over my head, but I don't think it mattered overall. I think uh, yeah, I guess I agree with what Carl said about the chaos. I did get a sense of chaos. Like I felt like I was hearing this muted, loudish, muted background noise whenever I was reading it. Like that's the impressions I felt during the battle, just like this general background noise, which is what it was, right? For the rest of our characters, it was the general background noise in which they got other things done, like Akamian and Esmenet. They uh, what commiserated in how Kellhus used each of them, and Confus is trying to do his own thing. Eocus wants his own revenge, apparently, and yeah, and Kellhus is off doing finding Moengus. My favorite bit in the whole 100 pages, and let me see if I can find it, but was when we found out that Moengus tried to become Caesarim, and then he couldn't because because the way you do is by wielding passion, which he came to a dead stop. I wrote down, I'll see if I can show it to you guys, but you know that troll face with the LOLOL
Yeah.
leaking out of its mouth? That's what I wrote in my book. That was hilarious to me. These people who think that they have so much control, and they do for the most part. Like and Moengus, I found maybe it's because of how they have this conversation, and Kellhus is more willing to doubt some of the things that Moengus has absolute belief in. But he came off as far more arrogant than we've seen Kellhus in terms of how he thinks about the non-Dunian. So to have him make such a what seems in retrospect like a very fundamental mistake, like Kellhus learned the most powerful thing he could when he tried to become a sorcerer, and Moengus picked something that would bring him to a dead stop. Which, yeah, anyway, that was fantastic. Yeah, the Maidenhead reveal, it we kept I think Mike you called it that it's probably another Dunya. And so yeah, it worked out. It was his child whom he trained in the Dunyan ways but wasn't fully Dunyan because not the right genes apparently. Okay. um do you think, oh yeah, we did see Maidenhead in the last scene, right? I'm curious to see where that goes, if we'll see more Maidenhead. I feel like he didn't play much of a role other than exist in the background in this book and make us try to figure out who the hell he is.
I really hope he has a significant role to play in the back 4 books, because like you said, it felt like his role was very minor overall, despite all the teasing. And I also think there is really interesting setup for his character. Like, I'm very curious if it's true that he is like not Dunyan enough, or is that just the, bullshit eugenics talking? Or
Yeah.
is that like in this world, is that literally true? Like, can he not achieve the full logos? I don't know. We'll see. And so I'm very intrigued by that. And the fact that he's willingly working with his brother is there's just after his brother basically left his their father to die. I mean, I just think there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. And I'm very curious if we get any of Methanet's POV. I mean, I feel like there's not too much mystery around him now, other than just what his personality is like, I guess. So I would be very curious to see how all of that plays out.
Hmm. That's the other thing I really, really liked about this section, although there's a tiny caveat there. The discussion between Moengus and Kelllhus, I thought that was brilliant because we saw how to Dooney and talk to each other. With Kelllhus, it's always, whenever he's talking to someone, you're constantly wondering how much is he like just telling the truth because it is, and how much is he doing this to get what he wants, and what the heck is it that he wants. And I think there's a certain aspect of that in the conversation between Moengus and Kelllhus, but there's also a certain, like, there's no layers anymore, right? So they're just being open and free with each other. But on the other hand, that whole sequence, it felt like recapping everything that we kind of sort of already knew, so that we can get to the end. Kind of like the I guess the mystery or thriller movies in which the villain tells the person he kidnapped exactly how he got him to this point. It's almost like that. But I didn't mind it so much because I really liked the tone of the conversation.
Yeah. I guess before we go into the interesting part of the conversation, because I know we're not going to spend much on it, like I want a quick note about the battle. Because like Carl said, we're introduced to a lot of names and a lot of people and it's very confusing, isn't it? I think it is sort of, it takes from like the style of Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings takes from the style of epic poems from, I don't know, Middle Ages and even down to the Iliad and stuff like that, in which you have a list of all these characters. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's there because you're supposed to know who these people are, and there's like stories for each of these characters, or stories for the cities and these very important figures. So the list is just to let you know that all these people are in here and also part of this story. But I think in this case, yeah, you don't know who they are, and they're probably just meant to be there just to make it seem like, to give more depth to the world, right? Like you're wondering, oh, all these people coming from different places. Because I think you get like one line for each of them or something. It's like, this guy from the, I don't know, it's got a big axe or something, or from the land of camels or whatever, right? It's a bit wonder about that. But I like the contrast between that, which is a very epic style, and then the parts with Proyas, which remind me a lot more of, I don't know, modern soldier movies, in which it's like grime and dirty, and the guy's just trying to survive, and he sees the horrors of war, right?
Yeah.
So,
it was very cinematic. Yes, it really had, you're spot on, Dan. That's exactly what it felt like, and I really enjoyed that. And I do have to say, Rip, my very strongly held theory that we would get the Heron Spear here. I can't believe some of the things that we were right about, and that was one of the ones that just completely fell on its face. I was so convinced the historical parallels would play out, but I guess it had no place in this battle because it's not a siege. Not yet.
It was referenced, though, right, in one of the dreams. Yeah, so at least there was something there. Could I just mention one thing that I really liked, which was the scene where Nair sees Moengus. I think that touched me a little bit, because clearly kind of comes to who brings him to who he is, really. And I don't know about his reaction. I think he's in denial, or he saw that, but he may have also saw that Moengus was already been stabbed by his son. But I did appreciate that scene. I was almost in tears when they embraced each other and saw each other. I thought that was well done.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was a phenomenal scene. I was so grateful we got it, and that is how Nair's story ended. It was very powerful. The paradoxical feelings that Nair is constantly living with throughout the story, and seeing that sort of at this peak climactic moment, where he's feeling this intense love, but also this intense hatred, and, where he's like happily reuniting with Moengus and at the same time, killing him. It was very interesting. I was a little confused about exactly what happened at the end. Like the cave collapsed upon them, and I guess that was Kellhus' doing. But I wasn't quite sure exactly what happened there.
You mean
other than
when
that they both died.
I was also wondering, you mean when it says they were enshrouded in blackness or darkness?
Yeah.
So yeah, I assumed we would get more Nair, but I guess he's gone. Does that mean he's dead?
I read it as he's dead. I thought that was he
kind of
went
did,
and
but
he
I
finished the
wasn't.
story. But I wasn't sure what was happening there exactly.
I mean, for that character, it's a little anticlimactic, I guess. I mean, but maybe I don't know what others think.
But I think Nair also stabs Moengus too, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But it's I that's also something I've never been too sure about how that happens. I assume it's like he stabs him by instinct, without thinking, but it doesn't say, I think, right?
Oh, see, I read it as like, I mean, he very willfully did it. Like he very much meant he has these conflicted feelings, but he did what he came there to do, which was kill Moengus.
Right.
But I mean, it's definitely it's confused intentionally. Like a lot of his feelings are so paradoxical. I mean, he feels conflicting things all the time, and thinks conflicting things all the time.
I completely missed that he stabbed him, or that the cave fell in.
The sequence, I think, was Kellhus stabbed Moengus, and when Nair, after Nair, reconnects with Moengus, he brings out the Kore, and I guess he is turned into a pillar of salt.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
yeah,
then,
yeah. Okay, it was.
And then at the very end of that bit, Serway touches his face. I just reread it. I read it at least twice. And then it says they're covered in blackness or darkness or something like that. There's a couple times when I'm like, what exactly happened here?
Yeah.
I thought that happened on accident.
Which part?
The Kore touching Moengus.
No, because it was like around his dick.
Yeah.
Like he not to be too crude, but that's what we're dealing with here. He reaches into his pants, and you think he's going to try to have sex with Moengus, but then he pulls out the Kore and touches him with it, which I thought was brilliant. I mean, everything there, like that's the moment where I think using the sexuality present, I thought was really well done, and was like really interesting how that plays out, and really non-traditional. And like less so, again, I don't want to harp on this too much, but like Esmenet and Akamian just hooking up in the middle of the battle it just didn't feel right to me. Like I was like, I don't know. But anyway, back to this. Okay, so no one knows what the hell happened there at the end, I guess. Like how that thing, I just like guessed that Kelllhus caved it all in, because it seemed like the consult got smashed too. But it was a little bit unclear. And I do kind of like sitting here thinking about it, that it almost plays like a very like Shakespearean tragedy scene, where like Kelllhus is in the scene, and then it's like you can almost just read like, in italics at the corner, like Kelllhus exits, and then Akamian enters, and it's like people just kind of like enter and leave, and they have their like very dramatic, tragic moment ending, and I don't know, it felt very like Romeo and Juliet, and I thought it was very well done. I do wish I was a little more sure of what exactly happened at the end, but I think I got the gist. So
I think sometimes he just writes in a way which is very hard to figure out what's happening, and I think it's on purpose. Yeah. And there's going to be more in the next series where you're like, I'm sure this is important. I'm not sure exactly what's happening.
I mean, another really good example of that is the end of, I think it's maybe the second to last, the penultimate chapter, where the Synthes is talking to the child and is like, "Can I tell you a secret?" And we don't know what that means, but we can guess. And I was wondering if they were somehow okay. So this is maybe a theory, but maybe a weak one. But because Moengus has the consult people like chained or whatever, he's experimenting on them and experimenting on their brains or whatever. I assumed that meant he was involved in maybe manipulating them, or maybe I misunderstood that. But my bigger question is whether the consult was in consult with Kellhus, or it's not very clear. But they certainly that little part there really is wide open. So, but it seems like there's a lot more going on. But I think you said it, Carl. There was not much resolved with them, with the consult at all. I thought there would be. I actually was hoping for a little bit more. I wasn't expecting like full denouement or whatever, but they remain quite a mystery after 3 books.
The way I read that was that neither Kellhus nor Moengus were like conspiring with the consult, but that Kellhus may or may not be developing a relationship with the no god. Like that may be what's going on, although that's again very unclear to me, because Kellhus seems to think he's talking to like god, but he also is aware that he's seen the the no god, not the Moen god. I don't know that again. That all, and I think it's meant to be unclear. Like you're meant to wonder.
I think it would make for a very interesting dynamic for the second apocalypse, right? Because I mean, if you are looking for exact parallels with the first one, you won't really get it because the Anasurimbor is somehow maybe kind of sort of on the side of the no god, and the consult will try to revive him too, if that's what they're trying to do.
But but we get the dream memory that is different, but it's unclear to me if it actually is different or if it's close to the truth or if it's reflecting reality, right? Where on a Surimbor, whichever one that was in the past, is like possessed by the no god. And Seswatha / Akamian is like talking to him and is like, no, you're supposed to kill the no god. And this goes back.
I think this happened before.
One of my original theories, right? That like, are these memories even reliable? Right. You know, can they be tampered with? Can they be changed? You know, I think we've been invited to wonder that, and never more explicitly than at the end here. And I thought that was really, really interesting. But also, you know, again, it's like a tease, right? Like it's right at the end here that we like have that open to us. Like that's a cliffhanger for a whole new series now. So it was very cool, but I was like, it was a little like, oh my God, like what is going on here? You know, it was like everything around Kellhus and the apocalypse suddenly like we opened a whole can of worms. Like we suddenly found out about, like we know the consult's motivation now, but we don't know like if it's true or not, you know, like what, you know, that they're trying to prevent themselves from like going to hell. And like what's the damnation of it all? Like, what does that even mean? How the gods are real, or at least Kellhus is certainly convinced they are. And they're trying to keep them from like the consult is trying to keep the gods from like interfering and like having power anymore. They like want to cut them off. It was just like, it was crazy. Like the cosmology of it all, like suddenly just got like blasted wide open, where a lot of things that I felt like were intentionally very like ambiguous in a real world way suddenly we're like, oh, we're like actually dealing with this shit, and I don't know what that means, you know? Like, it completely reframes what all the characters are doing. Like, maybe the mages are damned, you know? Like, I'm suddenly thinking that's a very real possibility. And so, I don't know. The Kelllhus is still the number one big question mark, because I don't know what to think of him anymore. He's not,
Well,
like, he's still doing his Dunyan shit, but he very much believes in God and the afterlife and is speaking to God, and but maybe it's not God, and like, what is it? And you know, like, he has all of these like mystical like beliefs now that Moengus like thinks he's mad.
exactly.
And what even is that? Like, it's so confusing. I mean, and it's not at all how I, going into this last section, how I viewed Kelllhus. Like, it completely threw everything on its head. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what to expect now.
Yeah, I mean, he believes everything he's been saying, it seems, right? We were all saying up until now, like, oh, he's just trying to manipulate people. But
Right.
it looks like he actually believes he's chosen
That's right.
by God to defeat the consult. And the halos are not his doing, it seems. Or maybe he's doing them, what would you say, not on purpose. Like, he's still doing it, but yeah, subconsciously. But he doesn't think so.
Yeah, that was crazy. He just has the halos, like that's a real thing.
Right. And he's got a prophecy, and he was, during the circumfiction, I guess, he was started being talked to by God or the no God, right? Yeah. But as far as like what he wants, I think we know, and Steve, please stop me if I'm saying spoilers, but I don't think so. He said that Moengus' plan was to oppose the consult, because he discovered the consult and he discovered what they're trying to do, and they're trying to block the world from God, pretty much, so they don't go to hell, like you said. But Kellhus said that when Moengus was going to figure out what the console was actually doing, what it actually entails, he was going to switch to their side. So he has to kill him, and he has to take over the plan or whatever to actually defeat the console, because the Dunyan would have switched sides once they saw that it was the logical thing to do, I guess.
Which I found very interesting in terms of, well, I mean, that's interesting on its like at face value, but I also, now that we're like questioning everything with Kellhus, I wondered if that was even real, or if that's his own self-delusion, right? Like, what he's been wrong before, you know?
I think it's because Moengus doesn't think it's real, all this cosmology stuff, right? So Moengus thinks that this is all like random thing, killing a bunch of people, and he's still trying to do the Dunyan thing to achieve the absolute. While Kellhus knows that it's real, or he thinks it's real, and he thinks he's a prophet, so he knows that Dunyan are damned, and so he knows that will happen when he figures out that it's all real, right?
Right. Which I didn't. Yeah, I guess I didn't follow the logic, but I you know, I'm curious. I mean, I don't know. Is he justifying himself, or is this like, are we meant to believe that's a rational belief? I guess I don't know.
Well, we still don't have any proof that any of this divine stuff is real. We just know that Kelllhus believes it, but we don't know that it is real. We haven't seen anything from the gods or anything about hell or heaven, right?
But what about the existence of the... Sorry, Mike.
No, you go.
What about the existence of the no god, though? Isn't that kind of sort of established with the first apocalypse? Or do we think the no god isn't a god? He's just some creature that was awakened, which could reason to be true, because the perspectives we got in between, which the Ziz and some other demon names, I thought they were consults flying in the air and whatnot, but it turned out to be the demons that the Scarlet Spires were summoning. So they weren't illusions; they were actual demons that they were pulling from, is it the outside? pulling them from the outside.
Which, what the
I
hell?
don't know
What the
what
hell
is
is the
that.
outside? So
I
I
mean,
don't know. The no god could also be some creature that they bring or that they brought from
Right.
the outside, not necessarily a god, just a god-like creature.
yeah.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't take it for granted that the no god is actually divine in any sense. I have always just personally interpreted the no god as being some, like, I don't know, powerful magical entity that is now like undead or something. Like, I mean, it's in a sarcophagus, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, all of that is certainly not super clear, rather intentionally, right? It's meant to be mysterious. I guess, yeah. I did take it at face value that, like, the cosmology stuff was real, just because I assumed Kelllhus was, like, I don't know. He's been right about a lot of shit so far. Like, he's a horrible person, but he seems to, like, kind of see things as they are. And so that I guess I just took it. I was like, well, I guess this shit's real. Like, I don't know what that means, but, like, that's what we're dealing with now. But I guess it is still a very real possibility that he is actually crazy, and he, drank his own Kool-Aid and, like, has just gone off the deep end, which is an interesting possibility. But then you still have to answer the, like, what are the halos? I mean, yeah, is he just doing that, like, instinctually? Akamian didn't recognize it as any sort of mandate magic. So I don't know. There's a lot going on there. And Kelllhus is clearly having visions. I mean, that was a moment that I was like, whoa, like, this is awesome. But also I wasn't that surprised when Kelllhus brought up the visions and Moengus was like, what are you talking about? Because to me, we have discussed this on this podcast, that, like, Kellhus is, like, he's not just, like, kind of, like, calculating the future. Like, he's having visions. And I don't know, what that means, but that was not necessarily a surprise.
Yeah, I don't think we had confirmation up to now that he was actually seeing the future. I think this is the first time he's actually confirmed it, right? Or am I wrong?
Well, yes, but he's been confused before. He's been like, am I seeing the future? What is this? Like, he always interpreted it seemingly as just him predicting via his, the logos, the shortest path of it all. But to me, the way it was written, it was the writing style to me that made it very clear that he was actually having visions, because he was like literally seeing things, and not just in a way where it just read to me like he was having like a spiritual experience, like, it felt very, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I keep saying I don't know a lot. There's a lot that's just so unclear. I don't know how to interpret it at all.
There are two things that I also was wondering about with regards to the Kellhus and Moengus conversation. And so I could not find this, but there was one part in here where I thought Moengus said what was supposed to happen was Kellhus was supposed to be assassinated, and then Moengus would take over. I wish I could find that. So I feel like that was part of the Thousandfold Thought, which is like the grand vision of what's going to happen, which I'm still trying to understand. But to me, one of the big issues here is that, and this comes up at least twice because Kellhus mentions it later, but if men are to, there's a quote in here, if men are to survive, they must act of one accord. So long as they're in Rethi and Phanem, this will not be possible. All souls must be rewritten. So that kind of comes up again. So to me, it's almost like they need to obliterate everybody that's not of the same mind. And to me, that sounds like, what could be a potential second apocalypse, quote unquote. I felt like that's where Kellhus is maybe moving toward, because then when he's kind of announced as the new aspect emperor, I think he says something like that as well. Like we have to have only one one way of thinking, or so. That is not what Moengus believes. I don't think at all necessarily. However, it's never really stated. Actually, it is Moengus. That was the Moengus plan. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I think
that's the thousandfold thought.
That is what
I interpret
it. The plan.
I interpret it as like the thousandfold thought is like it's both the plan and it's like the new religion that is going to combine all the faiths, particularly like in Rithism and the fawning faith, and is like going to, essentially combine them and add in some new spice, and like that was going to be the thing that unites them all, right? And Kellhus / Moengus was going to be the like leading prophet. I don't know that we should take for granted or just assume that it's correct that Moengus would actually have Kellhus assassinated, because that's what Kellhus says, right? That's again, that could be his own justification for killing his father, but I mean, we don't know. Like, there's no way to know at this point, and we'll never know because Moengus is dead. So
I think that was one of the possibilities. Maybe is like depending on what if the trial broke him or something, right? Or what happened. He just needed to get everyone unified under one person, be it him or whatever Kelllhus was going to be, or right. Yeah. But yeah, I didn't think of it that when you said that he was going to create a new faith. I thought that he was just going to make it that either Enrithi or Fanim end up conquering the other faith.
Oh.
Yours could be, I can see how that would be what he would be thinking too.
I went back to the section. It sounds like it is about kind of, transforming those faiths. To me, that means a new faith. But I don't think Moengus believes, per se, in either of the faiths. So how much did they actually communicate with one another during this whole time? Because he can speak to him, or maybe he just spoke to him, for a brief period of time. And I'm also totally, I guess it's not. We don't need to know, but who's Maithanet's mother? Like, how did he come to be? I'd like to know his backstory. That's totally unknown at this point, but very interesting.
I don't think Moengus ever actually spoke to Kellhus before this. I think, like, even going back to when we were in the what's the city called where they're from, whatever that city is, I don't even think he contacted Kellhus. I think he contacted other monks with his Kyanine or Sisharum sorcery. That, like, the dream he sent out, I don't even think Kellhus had it. I think Kellhus was just told about it.
Okay.
So I think, Kellhus certainly was talking to him in terms of being like, throughout this whole series, he's been like, Father, what am I going to do? Father, blah, 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 but like, I don't know that like they were actually telepathically communicating. I think at least my reading of it was that, like, in a way they were, because like they weren't literally communicating, but they because they are both Dunyain, they could see, like Kellhus in particular could interpret everything. What's the phrase he used? Something ground. This was like
conditioned ground.
Yeah. And that's so he could see what Moengus was doing. He could see the path being laid. And so in that way they were communicating, where there was this sort of, I don't know if it could say it was a dialogue, but there was this understanding. And then what, we found out, and what they both find out at the end here, is they are very much not on the same page.
Yeah. Is it called the same in Dune, conditioned ground? I thought it was, or did we use different term? Because that was very familiar. I was like, is that exactly the same word they use in Dune for where the Bene Gesserit have laid the foundation?
It may be. I don't know. It's certainly a similar concept.
Yeah, it's the same idea, pretty much. Yeah. You don't think they had Kellhus and Moengus some good father-son bonding time in Ishwal? Where they, no? before he left. No.
I don't even know if Moengus was like really around that long. Like I think he maybe left shortly after Kellhus was born.
How old are they?
Kellhus is over
Kellhus is
30, no?
30. Yeah,
Yeah.
Kellhus is 30. Moengus is? Do we know how old Moengus is?
It's been 30 years since Nair and Moengus had their thing. So he must have left soon after Kellhus was born. Moengus,
True.
30 plus whatever age he was when he had Kellhus. But yeah, I don't...
Kellhus was definitely tiny when it happened, one way or another. The timeline is unclear at this point, I think. But it's certainly Kellhus was a child at like most, if not an infant.
That makes sense.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I misunderstood probably.
Okay, there's a lot of it got very esoteric and weird.
Yeah. Some of the stuff though in their discussion and like reading it, I was more like, okay, get to the point. Like I know all of this.
Yeah.
You don't need to. It felt a bit like the editor told him to put it there in case people didn't follow before, so that everyone is on the same page, right? Because it felt very obvious. Like we already know all this stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
They wouldn't say it to each other because they're smart and they're right.
Exactly, right? Like it felt like that conversation, the purpose was to repeat things for the reader and not for each other. It didn't make sense to me that they would repeat everything to each other. They'd probably just pick up from where we leave off, like where the actual conversation happens about the consult and whatnot, where he from where he shows him the skin spice. That's where we should see from. But everything else, I think, was a recap ostensibly for each other, but I think it was the readers were meant to benefit from that, which again, like that, we didn't talk about it last week, but Akamian had a whole thing with drawing out writing down names and factions, and we didn't like it very much the first time. This time it made even less not sense, but like it felt even more unnecessary. But anyway, that's just me.
I have mixed feelings about it because I agree that I don't think it. I mean, I don't know if it's out of character. Like these are people who like can just read people's thoughts basically just by reading their face. Although admittedly, Moengus is blind, but like there's no reason for Moengus to like want a supervillain spiel about what Kellhus's whole plan was. Like it makes sense for Moengus to be like, this is what I did, I guess, but like. Recounting what Kellhus did was nonsense, but I did like it in terms of it. I felt like it did help build the tension as we were seeing the scene play out, and like the intercutting was a really good way of doing that. That's a classic, like both in novels and like in film and television and stuff. That you keep switching between scenes to like build up the tension to extend it, and I thought that was really well done and interesting. Well, I appreciated that aspect of it, even if I do agree that it probably was maybe a little out of character, a little unnecessary, which is weird that I'm the one defending this because I'm the outspoken, I hate Akamian's little drawing in the sand bullshit, where he just recounts the different factions for everyone. But, that's how it goes.
To me, it felt out of character for Baker to write. I don't know if this is true. It's just speculation. Because in the next series, especially, I don't remember this one, but right at the beginning of each book, there's summaries, and the summaries are quite well written, but also they often include extra clarifying information or stuff you wouldn't see as you first read. Well, this one didn't. It was straight up what pretty much happened without extra information. That's why it felt a bit tacked on, I guess. But I don't know. Again, I don't have any actual information.
Yeah. I agree with you there about not having extra information. It felt like we're only strictly repeating what the reader already knew or could have guessed from information that was available. Like when we were told, a few scenes ago, when Kellhus was on his way to this place, that he's walking on conditioned ground. We knew that Moengus laid everything out. All he had to tell us was the bit about the consult and that Maithanet was his half brother, and that's it. That was pretty much the only new information.
Well, I mean, I think Moengus, his whole story, his backstory, information. Like otherwise, you're doing a lot of guesswork, and maybe Kelllhus.
But a lot of that guesswork we could have done. Like if he just says that he arrived and then, I made a fatal mistake trying to possess these people, and I didn't know that passion is what governs or what thing. We would have been able to piece out everything in between. Like it was very Dugin methodology, everything that happened in between, right?
No, that's true. That's true. If you just gave like the very specific information rather than like monologuing about the whole thing, down to the every last detail.
Yeah, especially because we're like, we want to know more information about other stuff that they're not talking about, right?
Yeah, if it wasn't two Dunian talking to each other, that conversation would absolutely make sense. Mm-hmm. But it was two Dunian. They would have been able to figure it all out without the spoken context.
Yeah. I get the sense that Moengus is not as what he once was, considering he has snakes for eyes now. So I don't know, like maybe he can't really see. I don't think their vision is that good, actually. I think they compensate by licking in the air or whatever. But that was something I was thinking about for some reason.
Yeah, fair enough. I much prefer like Nair's and Akamian and Esmenet conversation, right? Felt a lot more natural, and you have to explain things there. Yeah, and I want to explain because
Speaking of Nair and Moengus, he has a nickname for him. That was cute in a very disturbing way.
Yeah.
What was it? I forget.
Nayu or Nayu? How you want to say it?
Yeah. Well,
pivoting again to a small thing that I this is not that important, but I thought it was so cool that the non-men have like hieroglyphs. I just thought that was a neat detail.
There's a lot of description, right, of the caves and what the non-men have carved there.
Yeah,
which might come back.
Very Egyptian.
Yeah. So to recap for those of us, who keep losing themselves in the whole history of Yerma thing, the non-men first people who lived on this planet, where did the humans come from? The consult are the Inkoroi who came in the arc of the sky, and they came from the void of the outside, and now they want to lock themselves here, apparently. But how did humans come to this planet? And apparently one of their plans is to kill all humans. That's what would seal the world from the outside. So
I don't even think it's all. I think it's just a lot.
I thought they said at some point later on it was all of them. Maybe they just want to be safe. I don't know.
Don't think we know yet.
Okay. And
never do anything halfway, If you're gonna kill that one.
I thought what we do know is that the current humans came from a different part of the world before settling here. I think that we know because it's been mentioned. I think they come from the east or something.
Okay. And there are still non-men around.
Yes.
We saw one.
We saw one.
I think we only saw one, I think.
Okay. And
right?
Yeah, we only saw one.
There was one in the dream in book 2. I believe.
Yeah, at the very end of book 2, there's at least like 2 or 3 with the console.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
True.
And Okay, so the non-min and Shrank don't figure into the consul's plan, either because they don't have a religion and, I don't know, their dying doesn't do anything to the concept of salvation and damnation, or what? Like, what are the other options here?
The
Or
Srank
they
were
were part of it.
created by the Inkoroi. I read that in the glossary.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Basically, all the other races that are like bad were made, and like all the monsters and stuff were made by the Inkoroi using their weird science, maybe magic thing.
Okay.
So I think it's implied they don't have a soul, just like the skin spies. They're just like machines of flesh or whatever, right?
Hmm.
It's implied. It's not being told, because then we have a weird thing about, oh, it's the skin spy with a soul, but you know,
Hmm.
I don't know about that.
And the Korai, they are described as absences. Do we think they are sort of linking the planet to the outside world? Like to outside with a capital O?
Oh, I have no idea. I'm going to take your word for that one. I have no idea.
Yeah, those were all my cosmology questions.
So for the non-min, I think, I mean, it's not clear yet, but maybe part of, like, they got genocided through the womb disease.
Womb plague.
Yeah, the womb plague, where they like, can't have any more kids. So I think that may be part of the consult's plan, was like, okay, they tried killing all the non-men first, and then that didn't do enough, and so now they're trying to do it with humans.
That's why they wanted to reawaken the no god, because his presence did that.
Right.
Whatever
He
he is.
completely, wipes the floor with everyone.
That makes a lot of sense. So you know how Moengus dismisses Kellhus's claim that when Kellhus is trying to tell him about the existence of the no god, and Moengus dismisses him when he points out to him that the consult would have told him about the no god. He says that he equates the consult's belief or worship of the no god to the Fanim and Indriti worship of their god. But he uses the word worship, which I don't know if it was in this discussion or a comment on the YouTube videos, but we don't know that the consult are worshipping the no god. This makes sense that they reawakened him for a purpose and used him, but Moengus is assuming that they worship, or do we have more information to say that they do?
I think it's more saying worship as in like they serve, because in his optic, right, worship is just serving this made up idea because the gods don't exist, right? So he's just saying like a fetish or something that, he's equating it to the god of the other ones, just something that doesn't exist.
Okay,
I think.
makes sense. Yeah. That also seems slightly out of character for a Dunian to, I guess it comes with the territory that you would dismiss things that don't make sense to you, but also you're not really taking in new information and applying it as you should.
Well, he is, but he hasn't seen anything makes him believe in God, right? In anything supernatural. For him, I think magic and stuff like that, it's just like another tool that at some point can be described, just like in our world. Oh, can it be explained? At some point, we'll explain it with science. I think it's like that. At some point, he'll explain it with rationality or something, right? Because he hasn't had the visions that Kellhus had. Because I think Kelllhus was also the same before. He was just saying, oh, magic is something we don't know that might change. But then when he had visions, it's like, wait, there's something else here.
Makes sense. But is magic not considered supernatural then? Or are they just assuming it's part of the world's?
Well, if you have laws of physics which enable magic-like things, then there would just be the laws of the world.
Yeah.
It would be laws of physics, right? Magnetism is pretty magical, I guess, if you don't know what's going on.
Yeah. Oh. Okay. Sorry. I just had a realization about there are several fantasy / sci-fi stories that make use of a strong magnetic field as a source of magic. Uh, that makes sense because of the random attraction thing. That yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Anyway.
but if you go far enough, like if you go to the axioms of physics, the base laws, right? You can't prove them; they're just there, right? So if you have a base law which enables magic, but it's just an extra base law equivalent to all the other ones, I guess.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and that's my style of thinking too for magic in fantasy worlds. But the yeah, this was new to them. The existence of magic was new to them. So in some sense, for them already, magic is supernatural. So you're allowing for the existence of one thing that you weren't aware of, and then dismissing another, which could be true, I suppose, but maybe it's you have evidence for the one and don't for the latter. So yeah.
I think the reason is more like until I have evidence for it, then it doesn't exist. I think instead of
Mm,
being the more agnostic sort of standpoint in which, well, I don't have one or the other,
yeah,
so it could exist.
yeah, and I suppose the it also believing in the god also comes with the religious organization territory, right? The people that they were willing to manipulate into being sheeple, they will, yeah, um who you're condescending and looking down upon, that's who you'd have to equate yourself with if you believe that the gods
Yeah,
exist, perhaps.
I think what we're missing is we don't know what the Fanim religion is because in Rihir religion, then none of the priests are sorcerers, so it's easy to say that God doesn't exist because we don't have magical powers.
Mm,
Otherwise, priests would have magical powers. But in the Fanim faith, then this is our part of the faith, and their
mm,
power in theory comes from God, right?
mm. Yeah, the Indra
Which makes it a bit
Kishori
more,
water bearers. Yeah, that
yeah,
was that another Dune homage that I gave up my water or something with the with the
yeah. It's a
magic.
very I love that image of like the Caesarium when they do magical spilling their water. It's
Mm,
very poetic, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
I like it.
Speaking of, sorry, one last thing on that regard. The Kellhus sees the gods baying like wolves at a silent gate. So he has inferred the existence of multiple gods, not just the no god.
Right. Yeah.
Well, he said that there are multiple gods and they're all just aspects of a one god, right?
Has
Yeah.
he
And it
said
could,
that?
yeah,
I mean, in one of his sermon things?
when he's talking to Akamian, and we thought he was just manipulating him, but if we think that now he believes in everything that he said, maybe he believes in that too.
That's the Inrithi
Mm,
belief, is that there
Yeah,
are these 1,000 gods or thousands of gods, but they're all just aspects of the one god.
yeah. But I think he brought it
And
extra too. It's like everyone is also part of that god, right? It's like taking one step extra.
and then the Fanim faith is that there is just one god, and that all the other, like, the multitude is not real at all. It's a fantasy. I did like how I kept, like, a sort of a strange anticlimax that I enjoyed was I really thought the Sea Sharam were like ahead of the game, and maybe in some way they were, just because they knew about the skin spies a little early, but that they made the same mistake the Scarlet Spires did, where they started all this shit because they thought it was the Scarlet Spires. Like, I was
Yeah,
convinced it was going to be they were doing some master plan, but like, no, they're just as stupid as the Scarlet Spires are. And I thought that was brilliant. That Moengus shows up, has this crazy reveal for them, and they go, "Oh my god, no! It's the Scarlet Spires!" Like, of course, they did the exact same thing. They accepted the enemy that they knew versus imagining, which is what you're talking about, Barsha, right? Of, the Dunyain arguably are doing the same thing. Is they're just making assumptions, but it's at least maybe a little bit more logical in terms of like, well, we don't have evidence, but I mean, maybe they're not looking in the right places. I mean, is Kelllhus mad, or is Kelllhus actually, he's clearly got something going on, and his dad just refused to accept that maybe things are a little different for him,
Yeah.
which I think it was just the height of hubris. Like, just huge mistake to do that. But, cost him his life.
So who actually knows what's going on? Because is Kellhus being manipulated too? Who's actually doing the manipulation? Like who knows who's orchestrating everything?
Fuck if I know.
I think it's not clear. Yeah, I even wonder if Kellhus knows what he's doing. I don't think he does. Yeah, I think somebody's taking
R. Scott Baker, that son of a bitch. He's manipulating it all.
Steve, we haven't heard from you in a while.
I'm just enjoying hearing everyone's thoughts on this one. And Dan's really good at keeping a poker face and kind of giving just enough information to keep everything focused.
I mean, even if I wanted to, there's just so much that I would have to say and go in order and explain with so many missing steps that you don't know yet that it would be really hard, right?
I read, I have to say, Steve, that you're really good at even keeping your notes spoiler free, because I snuck a look at your notes before I finished the 100 pages. I was curious, because I do that
cheated.
Sometimes. Before I get to, when I start feeling impatient, I start flipping pages to see, okay, here's where I can expect this to happen, so that, I can read patiently knowing that this is coming, so I do that sometimes. So I snuck a look at Steve's notes. I'm like, maybe I'll find out what answers I'm going to get. And I got nothing. I got absolutely nothing. He put it in a spoiler tag and everything, but nope.
I confess, I haven't done that with any of the books until right here with this last read through. Like, as I was starting the last section, I just started reading all the Kellhus ones. I had to know I skipped everything else, and then I went back through and read it all again straight through. Yeah. I was like, I need to know how this conversation with Moengus goes. That's all I care about right now. And it was, my jaw was on the floor, and then I was like, I guess I'm going back through the whole thing now. Like, oh my God. It was, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Varsha, you read my notes and you didn't the Saban takes Confus's head didn't get me.
I didn't care about that, and I was like, yeah, whatever. Oh. So there's like 3 threads. Sorry, go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
No, it's okay.
I was saying the ones I cared about were, who the hell is Esmenet? What does Moengus want? And, where does it all end for Kelllhus? I want nothing in those 3.
What if even Steve and me don't know the answer to some of these questions?
Fair. That's fair. I'm really curious about how this... I mean, at this point, I'm inclined to think this is more a 3rd book in a 7-book series than the end of a trilogy. Like, it has far more things fanning out from here than it does closing off. Is it just the end of the Holy War? That's why it's the end of a trilogy? Because I can't imagine wanting to stop here. That this does not feel like a good tied up closed thing of a trilogy to me. So
it blows my mind there are people who stop here. I cannot wrap my head around it. That if you got this far and you go through this book and you don't desperately want to know any answers, humans remain a mystery to me. I don't know how the latter 4 books didn't sell as well as the first 3. It's just unreal. Because I'm hungry. I'm hungry for answers. And I'm with you, Varsha. At this point, I can see the arc. We got through Moengus, which is what we were kind of promised at the very opening, right? We got through the Holy War. So there is an arc completed, but there is so much that is opened up at the end here that because that's the big thing to me is like, if they didn't suddenly ask a bunch of questions at the end, I would feel like it's more wrapped up. But for every answer we are given, we're also given like 3 new questions. And I want more. I'm with you. To me, this was like book 3 of 7, not 3 of 3.
Yeah. And one of the things that I saw when I skimmed ahead to see what happens where was the last thing. Akamian completely losing his crap and saying, I denounced this and I denounced that. And then Kellhus says, next time you will kneel. Like, how do you read that last sentence and not want to continue on? Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
That was
final
a great
scene
scene.
is so cool, isn't it? The final
Yeah.
sequence.
Yes.
Oh yeah, it's
Brilliant.
absolutely brilliant.
You feel how exhausted Akamian is. I mean, because you're kind of exhausted too. You've been on this journey, but like that last sequence is just written so well, where like he's like fallen off out of the city. He's rescued by this like random little girl and her family, and he has to walk all the way back, and he's in rags, and he's so exhausted, and you think he's finally gotten through to Esmenet, and he gets back and he finds out Kellhus is now emperor, and everyone is drinking his Kool-Aid more than they ever have before. And Esmenet has decided, sorry, no, I'm carrying his baby, so I have to stay. And he's just so sick of, like, it is so cathartic. It's just so nice to have him just unload on everyone and get to just walk out, just be like, yeah, I denounce you, I denounce everyone, I hate you all, good night.
So I have a question for all the... Oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, please go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I have a question for all the first-time readers. Did you think that there was a chance that Esmenet would change her mind and Akamian would convince her to come with him?
I mean, my understanding of the series was that it was really dark, and so I just kind of assumed, with how, I don't know, tonally, I didn't think that was going to be like, I didn't expect it. No, I was hoping I did, but I did not expect it.
I think the last scene was really apt in the sense that, what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, Esmenet was just rationalizing that, I'm carrying his child, so I can't come, right? I mean, it feels like a rationalization to me. We've seen before that she likes having this power, and now as the emperor's wife, God, she's going to have a heck more. So I think that might be her motivation more than the fact that she needs to be with the man whose child she's bearing. That I mean, that would only have been true if Kellhus hadn't come back and run off somewhere else. There was a slight teasing / hope for it when they were together, but I think that felt more to me of a last hurrah situation for Akamian than that anything real would come of it.
But do you think that even like now with both Akamian and Esmenet know that he's manipulating everyone, right? No, he's the Tunien. But does that change the fact that he's the prophet, right? I don't know. Like, does it? Akamian maybe thinks so, or maybe not. But Esmenet, I think she doesn't, because I think she said when talking to Akamian, like she already knew that he was manipulating them, and that's fine, manipulating her, and that's fine because he's like the son of God or something, right? He's so much more. That's how I interpreted it. So she's saying she's staying with him because, yeah, she's carrying the child of the prophet, and that's the right thing to do, even if he is manipulating her.
Maybe. I didn't think of it like that. I thought she had come around to the fact that Kellhus is manipulating everyone, that he doesn't... Oh yeah, what Akamian tells her, that he doesn't see, he watches. I thought that was a brilliant line. That, and then I think all the words that they've used throughout the series to explain the various ways in which people observe each other, right? I think Kellhus' sermon about witnessing, and then this a bit about seeing and watching, and then I think there was something in Moengus and Kellhus's conversation about scrutinization. I think that that those those simple words about like that sort of talk about observation, they define relationships between people, right? So the the I thought that Esmenet had come around to thinking that Kellhus is mainly just using her for whatever reason,
Mhm.
and she's sort of okay with being used, but that he did she also come around to the fact that he doesn't love her?
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yes.
so maybe that staying with the prophet and making sure that his child is well taken care of is part of his is part of her reasoning. But yeah, maybe I'm being too hard on her and saying that she just wants the power. Maybe she thinks that she's doing the right thing, because she does feel genuinely hurt when Akamian denounces her.
I think she's afraid too.
I agree.
Mm.
I think she's
I mean,
afraid of what will happen to her and Akamian, but also
exactly.
she's probably thinking about her child.
Yeah.
That's
She's
if
like,
I can put myself in her shoes, which I can't, but that's what I would maybe be thinking.
Mm.
yeah.
That makes sense.
I mean, as much as a reader, I want her to leave.
Yeah.
I think if I was in her position, I would stay too.
Yeah.
Like, again, just out of fear. Like, yeah, you're worried about yourself and your child now, and you know what Kellhus is capable of. Whether he's the prophet or not, he now commands a legion, and he is now, or is about to be, the emperor. I mean, even before you know he's going to be the emperor, he's terrifying, and she knows that, and so it's I mean, I think it probably is part of her is kind of selfishly wanting to maintain her power. And I think part of her fear is the fear of being impotent again and being, being the whore again, having to fight for scraps, having to fight to, I mean, because the worst thing she ever did, she did because she was starving. So, I mean, I think it's a lot of different things motivating her.
Mm.
Very believable, very human uh, tragedy and drama there. I thought that was really powerful stuff.
It's fun, but in most other pieces of media would be like, oh, love triumphs over all. But here it's more like, well, you need to be practical,
Yeah.
You might love this guy, but
Yeah.
it's not going to happen.
And I think that does set up for a very interesting exploration of what their relationship dynamic would look like between Esmenet and Kellhus, because I did want to see how that would pan out if she ever found out, or if she ever suspected that she was being manipulated in any way, what their relationship would look like then. So I don't know if we'll get there in the next series, but I'd be curious about how that would play out.
We know that Akamian is being watched, right? Like, this is not a spoiler, because in the epigraph he talks about it, and like I'm afraid of, I forget
Yeah.
exactly what he says, but in his history, he's like, he can't tell the truth fully
Mm-hmm.
because, he'll be killed. It's very Big Brother. I mean, with Kellhus out there, I'm curious to see where Akamian goes from here, definitely, and
Yeah.
I mean all of them. I'm very curious to see how it all develops. Proyas too. What the hell is his place in this new reality?
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that it seems like we'll get more of these characters. I know some follow-up series do like in brand new characters and so on. I'm sure we'll see them, but it I'm hoping we also follow some of these guys and not just fall out from this period in history. We have to have follow-up for You Will Kneel the next time you see me. That has to happen.
I mean, Kellhus fundamentally has to like be integral to the story going forward. So yeah, I mean, and everyone who is in his orbit, they all have to be in it.
Yeah.
I mean, you could theoretically, I think, write out Akamian at this point, but I don't think you will, because like the story makes a point of like when Esmenet is going over the sagas, and she thinks about how, Seswatha is he's not necessarily the focus of a lot of these stories, but he's really like the hero of them. And to me, that whole section is her seeing Akamian as he really is, and for how heroic his actions are. And Seswatha obviously being in parallel with Akamian as this mentor, this wizard, and so I thought, to me, that was very much validating the idea of Akamian as sort of the hero of the story, as flawed and at times passive as he is. I mean, he's really passive through most of the story, but I think he is kind of the guy,
You think he's the protagonist of the story?
I mean, at least of this trilogy, I think. Well, I don't know if like we have to differentiate. I think he's the hero. I don't know that he's the protagonist. I think Kelllhus is the protagonist. If you think of protagonist as like the person who's like central in moving the plot,
Yeah.
Kelllhus is the one around which the whole story revolves and who makes everything happen. But Akamian is the one who has the heroic arc and is ultimately in some way the moral center of the story. And, I mean, I would say his counterpoint being Esmenet, but I just think based on where Akamian fits into the lore and everything, and where he ends the trilogy, he's the hero of the trilogy.
But you don't think that now that we're at the end and we know Kellhus' perspective, now that recontextualizes his role in the story and he becomes the hero, I guess? I don't know. He's the one trying to defeat the console now, I guess, not Akamian.
But he's a bastard, so
is he? Maybe he was a bastard before, and then he saw the visions, and he's like, "Oh, this is my calling. I need to save humanity." And he discovers his emotions, stuff like that. Like if you really think everything that happened based on what we know now, it does change what the perspective is, doesn't it?
Yes. No, I mean that's fair. That's fair. I maintain my stance, but I
agree with you.
Yeah,
I agree with you, but I can see the other position too.
Well, again, I like main character Kelllhus, right? I mean, he's literally the titular character of both series.
Yes.
Like we now know he's the aspect emperor of the back four books. So he's the main character, but I do think the heroic character is Akamian. But yeah, I mean, God, I don't know how to interpret Kelllhus now.
One thing, Akamian is central because he is in the, he's writing the history. He's also in the glossary is interpreted by him. So he's kind of like omnipresent in a way. I feel like we're seeing a lot, through his eyes. And then the epigraphs as well. He's the only character. I think he's the only character that's mentioned in the epigraph. So I feel like he's kind of guiding. We're walking along the path with him throughout the three books. I don't know. I'm actually very interested to see what happens to him, and I hope that maybe he develops his own school or something. Because he's now a wizard, and which is like really bad. But maybe he can, because you're not supposed to be like a wizard or a witch, because that means you're like a hedge knight or whatever.
Nice. I like that. The Mangeka school was also founded by one dude, right? On that note, 3 things about Kellhus. We'll start with 2. One, he he did the thing with the 3 utterals or inutterals. He teleported himself from those caves back into Shime. That was pretty cool and also immensely terrifying. I forgot the second
I
thing.
missed that completely. I'm sorry. What happened? Is that a thing that
Yeah.
we didn't know that people could do? What? I completely missed this.
I also missed that.
So when Akamian was teaching him the gnosis, he says there's two things you have to say simultaneously. You have to do an utteral and an inutteral. You have to like think the meaning in different words, and then you have to say different words than what you're thinking, right? And Kellhus asks him, can we say three things, a third thing as well, and then chain them together in some way? And Akamian thinks to himself that there is a history of someone who tried, but he doesn't want to tell him because it's like handing poison to someone who can spread the poison big time. And but in the scene with Moengus, after he kills him, he says three things together, and he transposes himself from there into Shime. The next time we see him after that is him just appearing in Shime. So he said three things to teleport. That's what I thought happened.
I had just assumed he flew there, but that is really cool. Yeah. Wow. And scary. Really scary.
I think it shows even with a fight with his Cesarum, right? He teleports behind two of them and like snaps their neck or something.
Mm.
Which made me think of that, like, I don't know if you like 2000s meme of the guy with the samurai sword saying, teleports behind you, nothing personal, kid. You know, it's very, made me think of that. But yeah, but that's why they win the fight with the Cesarum, right? Because he arrives and he
Right.
couldn't get through their shields, I think, or something in the beginning, and then he just teleports inside of their wards and kill them.
Wow.
Mm.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, and he was using like orbits of rocks to deflect the Kore from hitting him.
Oh wow, I missed that because I should pay more attention to the battle scenes.
Yeah, I really like the sorcery part of it, of those scenes.
Yeah.
So I spent time like reading in detail about it. But yeah, because all the other ones used like the shield. They had the shield bearers, the Scarlet Spires, right, that protect them against the archers with the Kore, and they had to stay low under the smoke, I guess, so they couldn't be seen. But he was just flying around, and to protect himself, because you cannot use wards against Kore, he just used rubble, and he had like sort of rings of rubble that hit it, and when the Kore hit it, it would hit the rock, and it would become non-magical again, and would go random places, but it would deflect the Kore.
Okay, so talking about the metaphysics and the magic here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is an idea. I'm curious, first-time readers, your thoughts, or if this is not a spoilery thing, other people too. Because as you were describing this, Varsha, I was like, I don't know how you could like I can't wrap my head around how it is remotely possible to carry like three ideas at the exact same moment. Like I could imagine how maybe you could think one thing and say something else like that. I could like imagine it would be really hard, but I could see how you could do that. But to do three, I'm like, you would have to like split your brain. And I was thinking like, how would this work in a metaphysical way? And so my thought was, okay, the way you'd have to do that is you would essentially have to be a fourth dimensional being, and you would have to be able to cross time in a sense, that your consciousness in some way exists across time. And so theoretically, if Kellhus is having visions of the future, he is in some sense a fourth dimensional being. He exists in multiple times at once. And so that is why he can do the three whatever bullshit. And why presumably no one else can. This is just a thought that occurred to me as we were thinking about this, talking about it.
That sounds immensely cool. I hope it's true, but if not, that's immensely cool regardless. No, I like that. I think so. He has. I know we talked briefly about what we think the thousandfold thought is, but I kind of got the sense that it's this sort of expanded consciousness thing, that he can see farther into the probability trance or see more possibilities. And he says something about the folds of the thousandfold thought. I think I have that right, or I hope I'm not confusing it with the fold in the thousandfold, but he does say something to that effect, which made me think it's kind of like, I'm gonna spoil Dune for a sec. Is that okay? have
Yeah, go ahead.
okay.
It's
So
That
fine.
doesn't bother me, but
like the probability trance thing that Paul goes to at the very end when he consumes uh the poison, right? That's
yeah,
different and more vastly expanded than what he usually sees when he consumes the spice. So I kind of thought the thousandfold thought was the equivalent of that. Um, but where was I going with this? Yeah, so that expanded consciousness thing might allow him to maybe see farther in time, see the visions, and do the thing with the three types of chants that he has to say.
Yeah, I think you're right because what I thought is that the Thousandfold Thought is the equivalent of a golden path in Dune, right?
Mm,
okay,
Which is the way that humanity can save itself.
right.
I
I'm not
see.
gonna say from what, but yeah. And like here, it's the way that humanity can save itself from the consult, I guess.
Right.
Mm.
It is
That's
interesting
what I thought.
that it is a little more concrete than, I mean, not to steer into Dune, but the golden path to me, at least in what I've read of Dune, is kind of a vague idea of like saving humanity from itself, I guess, or like just from the universe. Uh, Although it has more in the idea of like evolving humanity and like pushing past stagnation, which doesn't necessarily. I'm unclear if that's kind of part of the thousandfold thought too, but it's certainly, we know what it's saving humanity from, which is the consult. Like it's very concrete in that way.
I think the similarity is more like there's this very narrow path that we need to go through to get,
Right.
and there's even if there's like bad decisions or temporary, I don't know, terror or depths or whatever, it's all worth it towards this goal, and you need to stay within it. But it's very complicated. Also, you need to be a I don't know, a mentat or a not even a mentat. You need to be a demigod, I guess, to calculate all the probabilities and everything.
Mm.
But
So if no one has anything else to say about that, I want to rewind just a bit to what we were talking about. I like an hour ago at this point with the dreams and the memories. I mean, what are your? We didn't talk about that in depth. What are your thoughts on we get? I mean, is it now? Okay, what the son, right? Who I guess Swatha tricked him, and I was a little unclear exactly what he. There was some she they kept mentioning, and I had forgotten, or I wasn't sure if I'd forgotten that they said something about they were going to save some woman, but who was actually not there, and maybe he's already dead or something. That I wasn't really sure what was going on. But that was like a very dramatic moment that was unclear to me. And then you have obviously the biggest moment, which is Akamian views an Asuring boar possessed, and it's unclear if that's the actual memory or if this is a change in the memory, if this is being influenced by some outside force, like what's going on there. So I'm just curious about all of your thoughts on these memories and the dreams and everything, and all that we experienced in the climax here.
I missed the part where the Anasurambar is possessed. Can you point me to the bit where that happens?
It's like the last one. I want to say it happens like it's part of the last chapter. I think it's probably how the last chapter opens. That when Akamian, before he wakes up and he's like falling out of the sky.
There's a part there that where they refer. It's somebody by the name of Anaxophis, and he's the Kyranian king, and he seems to be mirroring what the No God says. So that made me question whether No God is.
I didn't read.
I think it's page 395 or something like that.
394, 395 are the final dreams I'm talking about.
I thought there was. I was also very confused by that part.
That's not
saying someone that's already read everything.
Really,
so Steve might be able to help her here.
It does not bode well for us if we read it 5 times.
I didn't read this as possession because he did almost the exact same thing before in in the Warrior Prophet, where conversations overlapped with what the No God was saying, and it was terrifying. So I didn't read this as possession, but you could be right that it is, and I completely missed that.
Well, the possession is happening to a Noxophis, which is not supposedly how the memory plays out or is supposed to play out, because Noxophis is the one who kills the no god.
I
Exactly.
didn't read it as possession though, because an octopus seemed to ask very normal things. It's like, oh, what are you seeing? What's happening there? What's going on in the battle? Right, all those sort of things, and it's just mirroring exactly what he feels the no god saying in his mind.
Yeah.
Right.
It's almost like what the no god is saying is triggering an associated conversation.
I mean,
The
Yeah,
memory
or the
of
other
an
way
associated
around.
conversation. Yeah.
Or maybe the no god voice is from something outside his dream that is being recontextualized inside the dreams. I don't know. Like, that's sort of how it felt, like what Varsha was saying, sort of. But
I see what you're saying.
yeah.
I mean, okay. I don't know. Yeah.
it could be that it's not that they're the same person, but they're two sides of the same coin or something like that, you know?
No, okay, but I mean, it's definitely unclear what's going on here, but Anoxphis is distinctly not picking up the Heron Spear and doing what Akamian / Seswatha thinks he should do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like,
and wasn't it someone else?
So my understanding then was that, I mean, yeah, that there's either these parallel things going on, or it is the no god, because like that he's hearing the no god makes me think that we're at the same time that this is happening, the Shronk are doing their weird voice thing where the no god speaks through them, and he's speaking through Anoxophis. I mean, that's not a coincidence that Anoxophis is saying like that. That's there's some sort of parallel consciousness thing going on there, whether it's like strictly possession or not. Like there is something is going on there where their consciousnesses are connected, because I mean, they're saying literally the exact same things. And on top of that, Seswatha is like, what are you doing? Pick up the spear. You're supposed to kill him. Like, pick up the spear. Exactly. And he's not doing that.
Is Anoxophis the one that uses the spear? I was trying to remember. Or was it like in the previous streams? He wasn't, was he?
I think he
I thought his name started with C. No? Oh.
I think it was him.
I was also uncertain, but just based on the context, I was thinking, I mean, it completely changes it if this is just a dream and it's not actually that crazy, and this is just another one of the memories playing out exactly like they have.
Oh, yeah, no, you're right. It is him.
Yeah, but I thought, because the entire point of it is that the memory is different now, and that has never happened before.
I thought that he was sort of seeing, because before he was seeing everything in a like very epic fashion, and he was just seeing everyone being heroic and everything going as the stories, and now he's seeing like the doubt and all the little things that happen, the chaos, and that's how I interpreted this sequence, because it was the same as the sequence we saw in the last book, right? I think when on the Plains of Mangetta or something, that he sees a dream about this part, and the no god is saying the exact same thing that he's saying here.
But Anoxophis
is not saying it in the previous one, if I remember correctly.
Exactly.
And in the previous one, everything is like very epic and very as it's supposed to be, and now it's not. It's more confused and stuff like that. I don't know.
I mean, either way, certainly the dream is unreliable, right? But my understanding was that it is fundamentally playing out differently now. Like, I don't know what that means, but the memory is not happening the same way. And that freaks Akamian out. And Seswatha inside him out. Which, because again, like, I think the big WTF moment for me is like, what does that mean for Seswatha's consciousness if theoretically this is his memory? I mean, I had earlier, like way earlier, been like, is he even remembering it correctly? Like, are his memories reliable? But like this, having this fundamental change within this individual who has Seswatha's consciousness / memories means that like something is actively, like, are any of the memories reliable? You know, what is this even like? It's changed. What does that mean? Like, it's unclear.
Who is creating the memories? Who is
Right,
send
exactly.
them to all these people. Right? Is it someone? Is it, I don't know. Is it a spell? What's going on?
There's some sort of ritual that connects them. I forget exactly what it is. I feel like we're told something, like they like drink blood, or there's some weird physical. Maybe they only allude to it. I maybe.
But how does that lead to them taking the memories of? Is it supposed to be like the memories are like a simulacra or something that you can take into you?
Mm.
I don't know if we know that, right? Do we?
I
If
mean,
if we
my
do, it's not
understanding.
in detail. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say my understanding, based on how Akamian talks / thinks about it, and the mandate in general, is that all their memories are supposed to be the same. That
Yes.
the idea is that Seswatha passed along across now thousands of years and presumably thousands of individuals the same memories, the same things happening in the same way over and over again.
Sort
And
of
this
like he wrote a book and he's passing on that book, sort of.
exactly is
Okay.
like, but it instilling it, passing it on in that much more visceral way, right, through these nightmare memories.
Yes.
And that this is showing us that they are not unimpeachable, that that they're not without fault, without the ability to change. Like it, to me, this invites the question that, in a way that we haven't fully explored before, have they actually stayed the same throughout the previous thousands of years? What actually happened? We have this understanding of what happened in the first apocalypse. Is that understanding even true? Or are the memories themselves false or manipulated, twisted? And that, which I think is really cool, and I'm very intrigued by. I mean, that's definitely one of the mysteries I'm most interested in.
How
I
about the
think
other dreams? Sorry, Varsha, go ahead.
no. Go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say the memories. To your point, Carl, about them being unimpeachable. Maybe what they start out with is clean and the original version, but it does leave a lot to the interpretation of the mandate schoolman, right? And perhaps what we're seeing here also is, I don't know, I guess we haven't seen an instance of it, but wouldn't it stand to reason that the mandate schoolman's consciousness would also interfere with the content of the dream to a certain extent? It seems that what they see is manipulated by what might happen in the world, because Akamian was seeing a certain category of dreams when before he met Kellhus, and it seemed to be so yeah, okay, there is a question of who or what controls that, but also and we haven't explored this at all, so it's just like random theorization from me, but it could it be that the schoolman's own consciousness Im, uh what what's the word I'm looking for, intrudes and like tries to change things around sometimes, but based on a Akamian surprise, it feels like that never happens, and this is absolutely new.
Yes, my argument against the idea that is would be an expected thing is, one, it's not expected. Akamian is shocked, and so is Seswatha. Not just Akamian,
Mm.
Seswatha is shocked. We're explicitly told. Two, we have seen that the mandate can exist in the same dream at the same time, and
Mm.
they are not shocked by how it's playing out. So I think their understanding, and therefore our understanding before this point, is that the memories do not change. And I think you're right that what is going on around the individual sorcerer absolutely impacts which specific memories they see in their nightmares. I definitely think that's true. And it certainly, they as individuals probably do interpret things a bit differently person to person. But I think what we're seeing here is a more, I don't even know, like, I mean, the fundamental reality of the dreams, I think, is now questioned in a way that it wasn't before.
Mm.
I think we've been told that maybe in the first book or second book, it came in things like, oh, they're always the same, sort of as in like everyone knows what they are. They still impact him a lot because he's living through them, but it seems like there's a list or something and there's like, okay, well, I know what's going to happen. I don't want I don't want to go through it again because he knows exactly what's going to happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like the fundamental premise is these are unchanging, horrible memories. I mean, it's like you said, Dan, it's like he wrote a book, but in this case, the book is this very visceral experience that he passes along through his sub, his students, you could say, Seswatha's students.
I think the ones we've seen is right. Now. Yeah,
it's like,
go ahead.
I'm just saying, it's like using the book metaphor. It's like Akamian opened the book and suddenly the words on the page were different than they've ever been before.
Yeah. I was trying to remember which dreams we've seen. We've seen the Battle of Mangeda. We've seen the Walls of Dagliash, I think, where all the people are impaled on spikes and stuff like that, right? Along the walls. There's also the dreams where they're inside the ark, right?
Yeah.
He and what's the guy's name?
Now Kayuti.
Yes. I just wanted to touch on that because that also is a bit unclear exactly what's happening inside there, right? Like they're going through the ark and they're finding a lot of bones, and then they go and they're inside it, and there's like a huge city or something with human slaves and Srank and Bashrag. And then they go and there's like a lake or something where they bath, and then I'm not sure what happens. Right? Is that correct?
I mean, I don't know. I was really unclear about a lot of it. And the thing I was bringing up earlier is that Seswatha, and so the fact that no one reacted to this makes me think that it is meant to be unclear, and I'm not just forgetting something.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say
that
something.
Seswatha is saying, well, just that he said, she's dead. She's gone to you now. And if she lives, then what you find you will not keep, no matter how deep you think your passion. He's talking to now Kayuti. And like, who is she? I wasn't sure if I was supposed to know that or not, but the vibe I'm getting is we're not.
Let me see if I can find it.
Previous haven't mentioned that they're looking for a woman, or at least that's the story that Seswatha is told now, Kayuti. But sorry, Mike, you were saying, jump right in.
No, the one thing that I thought had kind of happened, I think, just a few pages before, is that Kelllhus was connecting to the No God as well. So I thought maybe he's now able to tap into some of. I mean, we know that Akamian taught him the Gnosis, right? So, right. I just wondered if he can like mess around with. You know what I mean? Like I it's maybe a little bit out there, but that's what I was wondering.
No, I don't think that's that crazy, because I mean, that's like the logical reason. You're doing logical reasoning there, right? Where what has changed?
Right.
Well, Kelllhus is here now. Kelllhus has this power. Kelllhus is having these visions. Kelllhus is connecting with the No God. That's the only thing that's changed in the outside world that we know of, at least. So we as readers, I mean, I'm right there with you, that I'm thinking Kelllhus has somehow influenced these dreams. And to me, of course, like part of what I took from that was that, I mean, we're meant to think this is a bad deal, right? That the dreams are changed, but that this is Anoxophus, if I remember correctly, is an Onasuring board, right? I believe that is correct.
Yes.
Anoxophus Onasuring board. So, given the parallel of the story, right, the history, if Anoxophus is suddenly now possessed by the No God, theoretically, whether or not this is how it actually happened, that's how the vision changed. That's scary to think that in parallel, in real life, we know Kelllhus is being influenced, is interacting with the No God. Maybe he is also being influenced in the same way, and the No God is interacting with the world through him, whatever that means, that's how I took it. Is like, if you look at these like parallels, right? Like Seswatha is Akamian, and the Onasuring board, who's like supposed to be reborn, the descendant, is Kelllhus. We're seeing this play out. I don't know exactly what that means, like what the metaphysics are there. Like you said, Mike, if the No God, or through Kelllhus, or Kelllhus himself is like changing the dreams. But I think it absolutely, right, is related to the fact that Kelllhus is now whatever he is.
Yeah. I guess
Yeah,
something
I
that I
think.
also forgot. Sorry, go ahead,
No,
Varsha.
go ahead, Dan. No, go ahead.
No, just gonna say from what I said before, but I forgot because I was rereading it now, was that they're inside looking for the Heron Spear, right? They're inside the Ark looking for the Heron Spear. That's what
right.
they're doing there. And there was some sort of betrayal that happened just before that.
Right.
But I think that part is not part of the dreams, right? That whole dialogue they have, of the usual dreams, that whole dialogue they have at the beginning of the chapter.
Oh, I don't know. That you may very
I
well.
think it's contextualized like that.
Okay.
But yeah.
Complex narrative.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you can see, it's very, even if you read a lot of times before, it's very complicated because it's literally written there, but it's also missing very crucial, you need to interpret a lot of things and get clues from a lot of other places.
I just wanted to say I really like the dreams part. Like, I usually don't go for that kind of stuff or like flashbacks or whatever, but because it's almost like peeking into the world building, and I mean some of the best world building, I think, just the guy has 100 pages glossary just just in this book. Who knows what he actually developed? Maybe thousands of pages and we're only seeing the tip of the iceberg. But I'm always, it's not too much. It's usually just a few pages, but I really do like peeking back 2,000 years ago, because although it does raise a lot of questions.
I think it has multiple things going for it. One, it's just really cool, right? We get dragons, we get crazy magic. It's like, in a sense, it's also like a peek at what is coming, I feel like. But it is also immediately relatable to the story, right? Where it's not just like it's some random flashback that doesn't actually matter that much. Like what we're talking about, these memories changing, right? The context of these memories, what happened, is immensely important to the reality of our characters at present, right? And like what I think we talked about last week about like the whole idea that the Anasurinbor line could be effectively false in terms of not being related to the one. I don't know if you guys remember that I threw this out because there was when I was reading the sagas, right? There was the random theory thrown out and mentioned in passing that Setswatha is actually the father of Naukiyuti, who, to my understanding, is who then sired whoever came next, and the next and next and next, right? So that Kelllhus is theoretically maybe not even related to what is his name? I'm blanking. It's another A name, I think. But the big Kellmomus, who
Selmas, Anasurinbor Selmas.
Selmames, yeah,
Selmas.
that he was like the prime Anasurinbor, who was like the bestie, right? I mean, all of this is immediately important to the context and what is happening in the present. I think that really adds to it. And I'm right there with you, Mike. I love this stuff in this series. I mean, I'm a fan of dreams in general. I think it can be an interesting way to play with symbolism and stuff. But like, this is immediately like, there's just so much here. It's so dense. It's so rich. It's so interesting, and it matters. Like, it's not just fluff. It really is important to what's going on.
Yeah. And it's important.
Mike, I was wondering, did you read the whole appendix?
I love reading it. I read it here and there. The glossary. I mean, there's so much in there. Like quite a few of the questions I think are answered in there, but I don't retain as much as I would like. But I might actually read. I probably read half of it. I don't know. I like that kind of crap. I don't know why.
Maybe we should do that before we start the next one. In the meantime, in 2 weeks, we can read the glossary and see if there's other interesting tidbits we didn't notice.
I mean, there's so much in there. There's just there's just a lot in there.
Yeah, I've never read it too, so I'm gonna read it before the next time and see if there's anything interesting. I mean, there is anything interesting, but if there's something which we didn't already know and is interesting to the story, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've been
because he does
intimidated
do
by the
that.
font size, but I'll read it.
Yeah, because I know, right, Steve? He does do that in the. Because I remember that I never used to read the summaries for the next series because I was like, oh, I know the story. I'm reading it all. But when I was listening to your podcast, you were saying things in the summaries which I didn't know were there. So now I'm going to read them. So maybe there's something like that too in the appendix.
There's a lot of the summaries that's revealed, and more just drips are revealed throughout the series.
I didn't read the summary of the second book. Should I go back and read it now? Is there things in there that we don't know from the book?
I think it's more so in the second in the second part of the series that more is revealed.
Yeah.
But it's just a line. There's so much revealed in just a line or two. But it's amazing how much is revealed in just like a sentence.
Yeah, in the next book, I think it's at the end. The summary is at the end as opposed to the beginning. I don't know. I don't know why they did that, but
is there? Okay.
But in my copy, yeah, I didn't cheat that much. I just kind of I did. You know what? I maybe a little bit. I did want to see if some characters are going to continue, because if not, I was like, I might not continue because somebody else was saying, like, I want to know what happens to some of these characters. Like, and I was thinking, like, I think there's a pretty big time jump. Well, what if, they're just not, I'm happy. I'm totally fine with new characters and all of that, but I think there are a few critical ones. Yeah.
Don't worry, you'll be fully satisfied. I'm pretty sure you'll be fully satisfied by what characters and their arcs in the next series.
I mean, the one thing I hear is that it's a lot darker and more horror, and I actually don't think that these 3 books were that dark. I don't know if that's a hot take or whatever, but I didn't think there's certainly grim. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot. It's not like happy and unicorns and rainbows and all of that, but
Nair's parts are maybe the most dark, maybe, because the stuff that Inkroi do is almost like cartoonishly evil, like it's so unrealistic, while Nair's one is very real.
He's
visceral.
He's awful.
Yeah.
I gotta say, just like Nair, kudos to Baker, because again, starting out the series, I struggled with his stuff because I was like, oh, fucking barbarian guy going around like he's so macho, and he's also a rapist. Great, like I've seen this before, but like his story just had so much depth and really went in places I didn't expect, and I just thought, visceral is a great word for it. Like, it was just really well done. So it was one of the highlights for me, definitely, of this trilogy.
It was a love story. It was a coming-of-age love story of self-discovery.
Oh, yes. He found himself on this journey.
In a sense, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's an interesting take.
Maybe some people, you just say... Yeah, no, go ahead. No, I'm just saying that, for most people you think, discover your inner self is being a nicer person. But some people, maybe their inner self is just being a bad person, right?
Some people just need to smother the inner self,
Yeah. Maybe you shouldn't be yourself. Yeah, you should just be someone else if yourself is Nair, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Nair should have been someone else.
Mike, you were saying?
Oh, no. I was just agreeing with Dan. Yeah, that I think he does. It is somewhat of him kind of realizing something about himself. I mean, even though he's constantly in conflict, though, so even up until the end, and I think there's a lot of people that live their lives like that too. They never really embrace who they truly are, and we're always I mean, that's why I think the character is so interesting, is that it comments on, you know, modern day life, and what is it, who am I, the question, the big question, and know thyself, and all of that. And I actually don't know how many of the characters actually, I think a lot of the characters are struggling with that. It seems to be a theme, like identity, and you know, I think like Esmenet deals with that a lot. Her history, and then can she break out of her history, and if somebody sees you differently than you can. So I really do appreciate that, Nair as a character and his arc.
But do you think, Mike, that Nair did reach a conclusion, did actually discover who he are and is at peace right now, or was the last one just the final deconstruction of his previous self and now he's completely broken? Because I don't know.
I thought he was. I thought he was finding some peace. I did, but with him, I don't think it's that simple. And if he is dead, so there's some peace in a sense, But yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I agree. I think he self-actualized.
Mm-hmm.
As like that's something definitely we associate with positive things, but I think as Dan has pointed out poignantly, I think some people maybe shouldn't be themselves. If who you are is Nair, don't be Nair. But you see the, I don't know. He's so complex. In some ways, I feel he may even be the most complex character in this trilogy, just because he's filled with so many paradoxes that to me felt so real. Like it didn't feel like it was just like thrown in willy nilly. Like it was all very deliberate and rich and complex, like, and ambiguous, right? That we've had arguments about like who is he, and like is he insane? Is he not insane? There's so much going on there with him. But yeah, I think he self-actualized just in a really disturbing way.
Fair enough. I guess we know now finally what his true sexuality is. Is he actually homosexual? Is he bisexual? Is he? I don't know. Would that be? Was the feeling he had for Moengus like real love, and he wanted to be in the same position he was at before, sort of? I don't want to say like a submissive position, but like a not the one in charge, I guess.
You have to define love. I feel like we would be getting really philosophical there. I mean, and I think even the question of like, we're really big. Audio, Steve.
Bye-bye.
We just said bye to Steve for listeners. He had to peace out for the night. But I think we're really big about labels, these days. And I think the reality is that people really don't fit. Like we put ourselves into boxes. The boxes aren't necessary. There's a lot of talk when we're talking about like sexuality, for example. How do you define like Alexander the Great? All these historical figures who like, were in some range of like queerness, but they view themselves and sexuality and the world completely differently than we do, right? And so the labels we use are maybe not fully accurate. So in the sense, I think, in the strictest sense, I think Nair was definitely attracted to men and probably even had a preference for men. I think exactly how you describe his relationship with women, I think is more ambiguous and hard to like really, because his whole view of gender is like so fucked up, and it's patriarchal and it's disturbed and it's really complex and unhealthy. But it's
True.
I
think
know.
what you said about like ancient Greeks and stuff like that is very apt here, because he's I think the way he views his relationship with women is about power, not about sex or love.
Right.
And that's also not to say, but it's a bit like what the Romans, for example, were Greeks. So sexuality too, especially between men, it was not like it was seen different if you're a top or a bottom, for example. One was acceptable, one was not acceptable. And it's a bit similar to a power dynamic. It's not all about like love or sexual preference. It's also other factors which influence it. So yeah, like you said, it is very complex, and you can't just apply our normal
Right.
labels to these things. Probably. Yeah, I think we're losing people one by one now. They were getting too late.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, Steve left before we could do quotes, but do you guys have any that you want to share? I'm opening randomly and finding quotes, I guess. Wait, where were we? It's not even the right spot. But that was one, the last epigraph that in the last chapter. Is he talking about Kelllhus there?
Which
So this one where he says, "And this is why I mourn my love of the great Kiranayan. For despite the pull of his wisdom, there are many things of which I am absolutely certain, things that feed the hate which drives this very quill." He's talking about Kelllhus, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's certainly how I. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It's a long epigraph, that one.
Oh yeah, it is long. And honestly, I can't say I followed all of it. I think this is a series that I'm going to have to reread with a lot more patience. I think this particular reading of it was colored by needing to know the answers to some questions I had. But I think that, yeah, it would benefit significantly from a more patient reread. Not that if I had paid more attention, I would have got more out of it this time around, because I think I would have read it exactly the same way. It's just next time I'll know what to look for or pay attention to the parts that aren't necessarily tied to the questions that I want answers to.
Agreed. That's why I like rereading books and series. I mean, the ones that have that depth, right? Where you get out of it, absolutely. This is definitely one that I will revisit.
Yeah. Yep. Cool. Mike? You were saying?
Just kind of a last thought for me. I wanted to give a shout out to David DeVries, who's the narrator. I listened to the audiobooks as well while reading. I think in the beginning, it took me a while to get used to his style, but I really appreciated it, him towards the end, and I thought he did a fantastic job. So just wanted to mention that.
Nice.
Nice, yeah. Has he done the remaining audiobooks too, or did they change
No.
narrators for the second series?
They changed it to somebody else, so I don't know why. Yeah. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. I don't like it when that happens, but hopefully the second narrator will work out for you just as well. But yeah, I did wonder about the audiobooks. I want to, probably the reread will be on audiobook, which is not really great for paying attention, but we'll see. Yeah, then in that case, we'll see everyone in 2 weeks from now to discuss the first 4 chapters of The Judging Eye, and maybe all our findings from reading the glossary in some detail, perhaps. Meanwhile, where can people hang out with you if they want to? Dan?
Patreon forum, the entire 17.
Page forum. I mean, just find us on the Page forum.
Yeah.
Fuck social media. Mic drop.
Same.
It is somewhat of a social media.
I denounce other social media.
Yes.
Very nice. All right, then. Yeah, if you'd like to join us on these discussions, we still have a lot of room for the conversations, consider checking out the Patreon forum where we do all of our planning. If you don't want to participate right here, you can still chat with us on the forum about the series and many other things. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye.
Goodbye.